Good afternoon. This is your teacher, Gayana Torosan. Today we're going to talk about Chapter 3, Small Group Member Communication and Personality Traits. Traits are relatively enduring behaviors that people tend to use consistently throughout their lives. So we will differentiate between communication traits and personality traits. A communication trait is the way an individual sends and receives messages, whereas a personality trait, as you know, it is a psychological profile that comprises the person's attitudes, values, beliefs, experiences, and behaviors. So we can say that because communication is behavior, therefore communication traits are part of a person's traits overall. So they're part of personality traits. They're a subset. Communication traits are different from personality traits because, as we said, they focus on interaction, verbal or nonverbal. They do stimulate the reception of a message in the other person's mind. So it is important to remember how these two are related. So personality traits include communication traits. Communication traits include several different kinds. We know people who are sometimes unwilling to communicate, and having taken or not having taken public speaking classes, you might know that there are people who are unwilling to speak in front of an audience. So there must be something inherent in that. And therefore, we look at the bigger picture of overall communication traits. One such trait is apprehension. Communication apprehension is the person's level of fear or anxiety associated with either real or anticipated communication with another person or persons. This might sound a little politically incorrect, but I might say that among my friends and relatives, my family members, a lot of people do not speak English very well. And when it comes to calling up an agency or a company, they're very reluctant to do so, to pick up the phone and speak, whereas they would be speaking freely at a party or at their workplaces. Speaking on the phone is something that they do with difficulty. Even people who are considered fluent enough or confident enough. So, without discriminating against people from different backgrounds, we can say that this could be a subset of a trait where a person is willing to speak in other people's presence, but not on the phone, right? So, those things happen. So, it is worth examining every case separately, every trait separately, and then differentiate between the circumstances. So the first one, as we said, is apprehension, the level of anxiety related to communication. And a person may have high, moderate, or low apprehension in terms of communicating with others. It can have four incarnations. One is trait. It's a more enduring characteristic of a person, that the person is overall apprehensive. Second, as I said, it could be tied to a specific context, like, talking about certain things or topics they're not comfortable. Audience-based. Some people are comfortable in a party, but very, very tense and very scared of speaking in public. And situational, depending on the situation. We can say that, speaking on the phone is one situation. I'm having difficulty differentiating context and situation. So I would say the context would be broader, situation would be the actual dramatic situation. So I would suggest that you look at the textbook to understand the nuance here. But, people may be apprehensive to speak in front of their boss or strangers or audiences or on the phone, but not so apprehensive in other circumstances. So it can be situational, like in one place they're okay, in another place they're not. And the context could be, work context, social context, etc. So again, read about this in your textbook, think about it even more. The next is the style of communication. Communicators have different styles. It describes the way a person uses verbal and nonverbal communicative behaviors to show how literally others should take a message. So Norton in 1978 described 10 attributes that make up the communicator style of any individual. So there is a total of 10 different forms of expressing, the nuance. Friendly, impression leaving, relaxed, contentious, attentive, precise, animated, dramatic, open, and dominant. So these are the attributes that make up anybody's communicator style. You can have a combination of any number of those. You can be animated, dramatic, and dominant. You can be friendly and dramatic. You can be friendly and open. You can be contentious and dominant. You can be attentive and animated, etc. So those combinations build a person's communicator style. One more thing that a person may have as a trait is argumentativeness. So you and I all know that there are people who are more argumentative. And there is this cliche, maybe stereotype, that lawyers would be argumentative because they're trained to argue, to debate. If you attend a debate class, if you're part of a debate club or you take a class in debate, in discussion, you would see that, argumentation is a class that we teach. Being argumentative can be trained, but it's also your willingness to contradict, to explore. And it is a dialectic process to dig for the truth. It can be done in many different ways. It can be done in a friendly, constructive way, as we will see later, or it can be done in an aggressive way, which is not so constructive. So again, the definition of argumentativeness is a person's ability to defend a position or controversial issue while at the same time attempting to refute other person's position on the same issue. And many times becoming argumentative is a matter of principle or values. I have to share with you that sometimes my family members and I talk about politics or, politics or the economy or philosophy most of the time. And I tell them that I have certain beliefs, ideologies that I'm willing to share, but I also want my family to understand my ideology. I'm very aware of class consciousness, and this is not something that I will preach on. But when I start talking about my social class and my need to defend it, to defend the interests of my class, and specifically not to be brainwashed into hating other members of the same social class, which is, we work for labor, we work for wages, right? We all work for wages. None of us is a millionaire. Are there millionaires among you? If there are, please send me an email and maybe send me a check. But we all have to work to earn our living. And in that sense, we're the same type of people as any, let's say, immigrant, as any worker, as any teacher, as any doctor. Whether or not the doctor receives $500,000 in wages, or 50,000 in wages, or 15,000 in wages, it is the same principle. You work in order to live. It's a completely different story when a person is born into wealth. So that is my principle. I'm very eager to defend my position and say that, I'm not going to hate anybody because somebody tells me that they are here to steal my wealth. Anyway, I become very defensive I'm willing to defend my position because those are the values that were installed in me from early childhood. And that is my consciousness. The good news about me is that I wish everyone well. You may disagree with me, but you will never disagree with the fact that I wish you well. So we're not going to be in conflict on this. But there are people who don't feel the same way. And those people may become verbally aggressive. Verbal aggression is different from argumentation, and argumentation still falls into the category of constructive communication traits, whereas the tendency for an individual to attack the self-perception, self-concept of another individual for the purpose of inflicting psychological harm, that is considered a form of symbolic aggression. So aggression may be verbal and nonverbal. I'll just bring you an example. Nonverbal aggression. When I used to be department chair, I would notice how people sitting around the table, they would roll their eyes because my style was not exactly what they wanted to see. And I would try to please everyone because I came clean in front of you just now. I'm a crowd pleaser. I'm a person pleaser. I want everyone to be happy. So when I speak in that manner and I act in that manner and when I lead in that manner, some people feel that they can roll their eyes at me. And I see that and I feel that it is verbal aggression. Or sometimes, you can talk about something and others will be looking at the clock. It's time for them to pick up their children. Although it's not too long, but they feel it's too long. And so they will be looking at their watches, and that is a little bit of a microaggression, but it could be understood. So from the definition of verbal aggression, we understand that verbal aggression is not aimed at a concept or a position or a topic or an issue, but it is an attack on some attribute of another person. Basically, another person's behavior or another person's belief. And this is coming from Infante, 1987, and Kinney, 1994. Whereas argumentativeness was defined and described, elaborated by the same author, Infante, in collaboration with Ranser in 1982. So I think I'm going to pause before we go to the next portion of our lecture so that it doesn't get interrupted because we have 15-minute increments. I'll see you in a moment.